Imagine, if you will, settling into the most serene and tranquil corner of existence, where time flows like warm honey through the golden air of eternal twilight, and thoughts drift as gently as morning mist across ancient landscapes that hold within their silence the accumulated wisdom of countless ages. Tonight, we embark on an extraordinary and deeply contemplative journey through realms that exist simultaneously in our tangible, physical world and in the infinite, boundless space of possibility. Vast expanses of golden silence and luminous solitude that may once have resonated with the gentle murmur of thriving civilizations. The musical babble of flowing streams meandering through verdant valleys, and the peaceful, harmonious sounds of human communities living in perfect balance with abundant natural surroundings that provided everything necessary for both survival and cultural flourishing. Close your eyes and allow your consciousness to expand gradually beyond the immediate present moment, floating like a weightless, ethereal observer across endless horizons where the boundary between earth and sky dissolves into soft, luminous haze that speaks of infinite possibilities and timeless transformations. Here, beneath the star-studded canopy of night that has witnessed countless transformations across geological ages spanning millions of years, we will explore together one of humanity's most captivating, profound, and scientifically intriguing questions. What if the world's great deserts, those seemingly infinite expanses of silence and solitude that appear to represent the very essence of emptiness and desolation, were once flourishing centers of advanced human civilization, verdant oases of cultural achievement and technological innovation that time has gently reclaimed through its patient, inexorable processes of transformation and renewal? Picture yourself suspended peacefully in the crystalline air above these moonlit territories, drifting like a peaceful spirit through both space and the vast, echoing corridors of time itself. Observing without disturbing, understanding without judging, appreciating the profound beauty that emerges when we learn to see beyond surface appearances. The desert spreads below you like an infinite ocean of tranquility, its surface marked by the graceful, sweeping curves of wind-sculpted dunes that rise and fall in hypnotic patterns that speak of eternal rhythms, eternal changes, eternal stories unfolding across millennia with the patience of geological time itself. Each individual grain of sand visible in this vast landscape catches and reflects starlight with crystalline precision, creating a subtle, shimmering tapestry that whispers of countless journeys across continents and through geological epochs. Countless transformations from mountain peak to valley floor. Countless narratives waiting patiently to be discovered and understood by curious minds willing to listen carefully to the Earth's ancient wisdom preserved in stone and sediment, in chemical signatures and fossil remains, in the accumulated testimony of winds that have blown across these lands for millions of years, carrying with them the stories of transformation and adaptation that characterize all life on our planet. The night air that surrounds us in this contemplative space carries within its gentle currents the whispers of infinite possibility, the soft suggestion that what our eyes perceive in the immediate present represents merely the visible surface of a reality far more complex, wonderful, and meaningful than first appearances might suggest to casual observation. Beneath your floating consciousness, beneath the seemingly barren landscapes that stretch toward every horizon in magnificent desolation, lie layer upon layer of accumulated history, each geological stratum representing a distinct chapter in our planet's vast and ongoing autobiography, written in languages of stone and mineral, of chemical composition and radioactive decay, of magnetic orientation and crystalline structure. Tonight, as we drift together through this peaceful, contemplative space removed from the urgencies and distractions of daily life, we will turn these ancient pages with careful reverence and scientific precision. Reading the stories written in sand and stone with the same attention we might bring to a beloved book. Interpreting the patient testimony of winds and weather with the respect due to witnesses who have observed transformations spanning millions of years. Learning from the meticulous observations of dedicated scientists who have devoted their entire careers to understanding the secret languages spoken by rocks and minerals, by ice cores and tree rings, by the subtle chemical signatures preserved in cave formations and lake sediments that serve as archives of Earth's environmental history. As we begin this gentle exploration into realms both historical and hypothetical, both scientifically documented and imaginatively reconstructed, allow the rhythm of your breathing to synchronize naturally and effortlessly with the eternal rhythm of the desert itself. Slow, steady, peaceful, unhurried, like the breathing of the earth itself as it cycles through its vast seasonal changes across geological time. Inhaling and exhaling transformations that reshape continents as gently as waves reshape sandy shores, creating and destroying and recreating landscapes with the infinite patience that characterizes all natural processes operating on timescales that dwarf human perception and memory. Feel yourself becoming an integral part of this timeless landscape. Your awareness expanding gradually to embrace simultaneously the immediate present moment with its specific sounds and sensations, and the incomprehensible sweep of deep time that stretches backward through millions of years of Earth history and forward into an equally vast future filled with possibilities we can barely imagine. In this state of serene contemplation, removed from the anxieties and pressures that often characterize our daily existence, we prepare ourselves to consider the remarkable and increasingly well-supported scientific possibility that our planet's most arid regions may once have been gardens of human civilization, places where sophisticated communities flourished for thousands of years, where knowledge was cultivated and preserved with the same loving care. We might lavish on precious plants in a carefully tended garden. The question we explore together during these peaceful hours transcends the boundaries of academic curiosity or speculative imagination, serving instead as a luminous window into the fundamental nature of change itself. The way our living planet breathes in cycles so vast they dwarf human memory and historical records. The way landscapes transform themselves with the infinite patience of geological time, and the way human communities throughout history have demonstrated remarkable abilities to adapt, migrate, innovate, and evolve in response to these grand transformations that reshape the very foundations of existence across continents and millennia. As we drift deeper into this contemplation, allowing ourselves to be carried by currents of thought and possibility that flow like gentle streams through consciousness, permit yourself to embrace the profound sense of peace that emerges naturally from recognizing our place within this greater cosmic dance of existence. This eternal conversation between earth and sky, between stability and change, between the temporary arrangements we call the present and the eternal processes that shape all existence across unimaginable spans of time, that make our individual lives seem like brief flickers of consciousness in an endless ocean of becoming and transformation. Let us begin our contemplative journey in the heart of the Sahara, that vast expanse of golden tranquility that stretches across northern Africa like a meditation on the very nature of space, silence, and the mysterious relationship between emptiness and fullness, between apparent desolation and hidden abundance. Today, as gentle moonlight bathes its endless dunes in silver luminescence that transforms the entire landscape into something approaching the magical and otherworldly, it appears to embody the very definition of emptiness. A place where life exists only in its most resilient and specialized forms, where water represents a treasure more precious than gold or jewels, and where the horizon seems to extend into infinity without variation relief or the promise of change. Yet this apparent emptiness reveals itself, upon deeper contemplation and scientific investigation, to be a kind of pregnant fullness, rich with hidden potential and abundant with carefully concealed history, that waits patiently for human curiosity and scientific methodology to reveal its secrets. The Sahara, as it exists in our current historical moment, represents a relatively recent phenomenon when viewed against the vast backdrop of geological time, a temporary arrangement of climate and landscape that has characterized this region for only a few thousand years out of the millions that constitute Earth's environmental history. If we possessed the ability to accelerate time and observe the last 10,000 years unfolding like frames in a slowly advancing film projected against the vast screen of geological time, we would witness a transformation so gradual, so gentle in its pace and methodical in its progression, that it would seem as though the Earth itself was breathing slowly and deeply with cosmic patience, changing its fundamental character with each long, patient exhalation that spans centuries and millennia. Each inhalation bringing new conditions and possibilities that reshape the very foundations of life and human possibility across this vast region. The revelations of modern science, discovered through decades of painstaking research conducted by teams of dedicated specialists working across multiple continents and disciplines, combining the efforts of archaeologists and climatologists, geologists and anthropologists, botanists and zoologists, whisper to us of secrets that challenge our most basic assumptions about the permanence and stability of the world around us. These scientific discoveries emerge slowly from the accumulated evidence of countless research projects, each contributing pieces to a vast puzzle that spans millions of years and encompasses the entire history of human presence on our planet. During what climatologists and paleontologists have designated the African humid period, which extended from approximately 11,000 to 5,000 years ago, a time span that encompasses much of what we consider recorded human history. This region experienced a dramatically different climate regime that supported ecosystems and human communities whose existence would seem almost fantastical from our contemporary perspective. Accustomed as we are to thinking of the Sahara as the very embodiment of aridity and desolation, allow your imagination to drift backward through time like a gentle traveler visiting distant countries, contemplating this vanished world with the wonder and curiosity of an explorer discovering new continents. Picture broad rivers flowing, where now only wind travels across empty spaces, their waters catching and reflecting sunlight as they meandered through valleys that today contain nothing but carefully sculpted sand, arranged in patterns that speak of wind and time but preserve no memory of the flowing water that once carved these channels through living rock. Envision vast lakes, some larger than entire modern countries, their surfaces rippling with gentle waves as communities gathered along their shores to fish in waters teeming with life, to gather fresh water for daily needs and agricultural purposes, to conduct the peaceful business of human existence in an environment of abundance rather than scarcity, where nature provided generously for both physical needs and cultural aspirations. These were not small, temporary bodies of water that filled only during exceptional rainfall events, but permanent inland seas that supported complex and diverse ecosystems extending far beyond their immediate shores. The margins of these ancient lakes were green with vegetation that provided food and shelter for countless species, including our human ancestors who developed sophisticated cultures in harmony with these generous natural surroundings. Palm trees grew in groves that provided dates and building materials. Grasslands supported herds of animals that served as sources of food and materials for clothing and tools. And the reliability of water sources allowed communities to develop permanent settlements that could support specialized crafts, artistic traditions, and the accumulation of knowledge across generations. The archaeological evidence for this vanished world emerges slowly and carefully from the sand, like precious memories surfacing from the depths of sleep. Each discovery requiring patient excavation and meticulous analysis to reveal its secrets. Teams of archaeologists working under challenging conditions that test human endurance and dedication have uncovered settlements, tools, artistic works, and other human artifacts that speak eloquently of communities who lived not as struggling survivors in a hostile environment, but as prosperous participants in a rich and diverse ecosystem that supported their material needs while inspiring remarkable cultural achievements that continue to astonish contemporary researchers. These archaeological sites preserve evidence of sophisticated technologies adapted to local conditions, including water management systems that demonstrated advanced understanding of hydrology and engineering, agricultural techniques that took advantage of seasonal flooding patterns, and architectural innovations that provided comfort and security while harmonizing beautifully with natural surroundings. The pottery discovered at these sites displays artistic sophistication and technical skill that rivals contemporary ceramics, while tools and weapons demonstrate metallurgical knowledge and craftsmanship that required generations of accumulated expertise and cultural transmission. Rock art, preserved in the dry air of desert caves and protected canyon walls, provides visual testimony to a world that seems almost mythical from our current perspective, yet represents careful documentation of actual environmental conditions and cultural practices. Ancient artists, working with pigments ground from local minerals and applied with tools crafted from available materials, created detailed paintings and engravings that document their careful observations of abundant wildlife and lush vegetation that characterized their daily environment. These artistic works, which represent some of humanity's earliest and most sophisticated forms of visual expression, depict elephants wandering freely across rolling savannas, their massive forms rendered with attention to anatomical detail that demonstrates intimate familiarity with these creatures and their behavior. Hippopotamuses are shown wallowing in marshy areas that no longer exist, their bulk captured with artistic skill that combines aesthetic sensitivity with scientific observation. Giraffes stretch their elegant necks to browse from trees that vanished thousands of years ago, their distinctive patterns and proportions recorded with precision that rivals modern wildlife photography. Numerous other species appear in these ancient galleries: antelope and buffalo, lions and leopards, crocodiles, and various species of birds, all depicted in contexts that indicate abundant water sources, diverse vegetation communities, and ecological relationships that supported much larger and more diverse animal populations than could survive in the current Saharan environment. The artists who created these works also documented human activities, including hunting and gathering, ceremonial practices, and daily life scenes that provide invaluable insights into the social organization and cultural practices of these ancient communities. These images represent far more than artistic imagination or spiritual vision, though they certainly contain elements of both creative expression and religious significance. Rather, they constitute careful documentary records created by skilled observers who possessed intimate knowledge of their environment and felt compelled to preserve visual records of the world they inhabited for reasons we can only imagine. Perhaps for educational purposes, perhaps as part of religious or ceremonial practices, perhaps simply from the fundamental human desire to create beauty and meaning through artistic expression. The precision with which these ancient artists depicted animal anatomy, behavioral details, and ecological relationships demonstrates not only remarkable artistic skill, but scientific observation capabilities that rival modern field biology in their attention to detail and accuracy. The way they portrayed seasonal changes in animal behavior, The interaction between different species and the relationship between animals and their habitats reveals sophisticated understanding of ecological principles that modern science has only recently begun to appreciate fully. The transition from this green, abundant Sahara to the desert landscape we know today unfolded across thousands of years with the inexorable patience that characterizes all major geological and climatic changes, proceeding according to rhythms and timescales that operate far beyond human perception and memory. This transformation was not sudden or catastrophic in nature, nor did it result from human activities or external interventions, but proceeded so gradually that many generations of human communities lived their entire lives without noticing any significant alteration in their environment, adapting slowly and naturally to evolving conditions in ways that must have seemed like normal responses to typical seasonal and cyclical variations, rather than participation in a fundamental transformation of their entire world. As the Earth's axis shifted slightly in its cosmic dance around the Sun, influencing the complex atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns that determine regional climate systems around the globe, the monsoon systems that brought life-giving moisture to northern Africa gradually weakened and retreated southward toward their current patterns. This process happened with such deliberate slowness that individual communities had ample time to develop adaptive strategies, to experiment with new technologies and social arrangements, and to make gradual adjustments that allowed them to maintain their cultural traditions while accommodating changing environmental conditions. The mechanics of this climate change involved complex interactions between solar radiation patterns, atmospheric circulation systems, and ocean currents that scientists are still working to understand completely. As the amount of solar radiation reaching different parts of Earth's surface changed due to variations in the planet's orbital characteristics, the temperature differences that drive weather patterns shifted gradually, causing the bands of rainfall that support different vegetation zones to migrate slowly across the continental surface. As the Great Lakes slowly evaporated over centuries and millennia, and the rivers began to flow more sporadically as their sources in distant mountains received less precipitation, communities throughout the region faced choices that echo across time to reach us in our contemporary contemplation. Some groups chose migration, following the retreating rains toward regions that remained more hospitable to their traditional ways of life, carrying with them the accumulated knowledge and cultural traditions that had sustained their ancestors for countless generations. These migrations likely took place over many generations, with communities moving gradually across landscapes that changed slowly enough to allow for careful adaptation and the preservation of cultural knowledge and social structures. The process resembled a vast, slow-motion dance in which human communities, animal populations, and plant communities all participated, each responding to changing conditions according to their own capabilities and constraints, each contributing to the overall transformation of the landscape through their choices and adaptations. Other communities chose to remain in their ancestral territories, developing new technologies and modified social structures that allowed them to thrive despite increasingly arid conditions. These adaptations included remarkable innovations in water storage and management, demonstrating engineering skills that allowed communities to capture and preserve rainfall during increasingly brief, wet seasons, to locate and access underground water sources, and to develop agricultural techniques that could produce reliable harvests with minimal water inputs. The development of drought-resistant agricultural techniques required generations of careful experimentation and observation. As communities learned which crops could survive with minimal water, how to time planting and harvesting to take advantage of brief rainy periods, and how to modify soil conditions to maximize water retention. These agricultural innovations often involved sophisticated understanding of plant biology, soil chemistry, and local climate patterns that enabled communities to maintain food security Even as environmental conditions became more challenging, changes in settlement patterns reflected adaptive responses to evolving water availability, with communities developing new forms of architecture that provided protection from increasing heat while maximizing the benefits of scarce precipitation. The evolution of trade networks connecting communities across expanding distances allowed for the exchange of resources that became more specialized and scarce as local conditions changed, creating economic relationships that helped individual communities maintain their standard of living despite local environmental challenges. Still, other groups may have been gradually absorbed into the landscape itself, their settlements slowly buried by advancing sand as they relocated to more favorable areas. Their material culture preserved like pressed flowers between the pages of geological time, waiting patiently for future archaeologists to rediscover and interpret their stories. The preservation conditions created by the advancing desert have protected these archaeological sites in ways that would have been impossible in more humid environments, creating a vast archive of human history that continues to yield new discoveries as research techniques become more sophisticated and systematic surveys expand into previously unexplored regions. The sand that buried these ancient settlements acted as a protective blanket, maintaining stable temperature and humidity conditions that prevented the decay of organic materials while protecting artifacts from disturbance by later human activities. This natural preservation system has created archaeological sites where textiles, wooden objects, food remains, and other perishable materials survive in remarkable condition, providing unprecedented insights into the daily lives and cultural practices of ancient communities. The process of environmental change and human adaptation visible in the Saharan archaeological record provides profound insights into the complex, dynamic relationship between human communities and their natural surroundings. Rather than viewing environmental change as an external force that acts upon passive human populations, this evidence suggests a more nuanced understanding in which human communities actively participate in the ongoing transformation of their landscapes through their choices about resource use, settlement patterns, social organization, and technological development. The Gobi Desert, stretching across vast portions of Mongolia and northern China like a testament to the power of continental climate systems and the dramatic variations that characterize our planet's environmental history, offers another fascinating and scientifically significant window into this hidden history of human adaptation and environmental transformation. Today, its name has become synonymous throughout the world with isolation, extremity, and the challenges faced by life in one of Earth's most demanding environments. A place where temperatures soar beyond human tolerance during summer months and plummet to dangerous levels during winter, where annual rainfall can be measured in mere inches, and where the horizon shimmers with mirages that speak of water existing only in memory, hope, and the occasional brief blessing of unexpected precipitation. The contemporary Gobi presents a landscape of extraordinary beauty and terrible harshness, where vast expanses of gravel and sand extend to horizons that seem impossibly distant, where sudden sandstorms can engulf travelers in clouds of choking dust, and where the search for water sources requires knowledge and skills that have been refined over thousands of years by communities that learn to survive under these extreme conditions. Modern travelers crossing this region must carry all necessary supplies and navigate by sophisticated technological aids to avoid becoming lost in an environment where landmarks are constantly shifting and where natural navigation aids are few and far between. Yet beneath this seemingly forbidding landscape, teams of international archaeologists working under extremely challenging conditions that test the limits of human endurance and dedication have uncovered compelling evidence of sophisticated communities that once called these lands home, developing complex societies that not only survived but flourished in environmental conditions very different from those that characterize the region today. The discovery of the Tarim Basin mummies preserved in the dry desert air for thousands of years like natural time capsules waiting patiently for scientific investigation, has revealed a fascinating and previously unknown chapter in human history, where the boundaries between East and West became fluid and permeable. These remarkable archaeological discoveries have revolutionized our understanding of ancient trade routes and cultural exchange, demonstrating that regions we now consider nearly impassable barriers to human movement once served as corridors for commerce and communication that connected distant civilizations across landscapes that supported much larger human populations than would be possible under current environmental conditions. The evidence suggests that ancient trade routes connected communities across thousands of miles, facilitating the exchange not only of goods and materials, but also of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices that enriched all participating communities. These remarkable individuals, resting peacefully in their sandy tombs through countless centuries of change and transformation, offer us intimate glimpses into lives lived in a different world, under different environmental conditions, according to different possibilities than those that characterize our contemporary experience. Their physical remains, preserved by the exceptional conditions created by extreme dryness and temperature stability, provide detailed information about their health, diet, lifestyle, genetic heritage, and even their individual personalities as revealed through facial features that remain remarkably well preserved. The preservation of these human remains is so complete that researchers can conduct detailed analyses that reveal information about ancient diets, disease patterns, physical activities, and even stress levels experienced by individuals who lived thousands of years ago. DNA analysis has revealed genetic connections to populations across vast distances, confirming the archaeological evidence for extensive trade networks and population movements that connected the Gobi region to communities throughout Asia and beyond. The clothing and textiles discovered with these ancient individuals tell stories that unfold like whispered secrets shared across the vast expanses of time that separate us from their world, each garment representing hours of skilled labor and artistic creativity. These remarkable artifacts, woven with extraordinary skill from wool and plant fibers using techniques that required both sophisticated technical knowledge and highly developed artistic vision, display patterns, colors, and construction methods that speak of advanced textile traditions and cultural sophistication that rivals anything produced in more famous ancient civilizations. The quality and complexity of these textiles suggests communities with sufficient leisure time and available resources to support specialized craftspeople who could dedicate themselves to developing true mastery of complex artistic and technical skills. The patterns they chose to weave into their clothing often incorporated symbolic elements that may have indicated social status, clan affiliation, or spiritual beliefs, while the colors they achieved using dyes extracted from local plants and minerals demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of chemistry and material science. The level of skill demonstrated in their weaving techniques, including complex pattern work, precise color control, and innovative construction methods, points to societies that had moved far beyond mere survival concerns to create beauty for its own sake, to develop artistic traditions that served both practical and aesthetic purposes, and to maintain cultural institutions that supported the development and transmission of specialized knowledge across generations. Carbon dating and other sophisticated scientific techniques allow contemporary researchers to place these communities within their proper temporal and cultural context, revealing periods when the Gobi region experienced significantly more moderate climate conditions than those that characterize it today. These scientific analyses indicate that during certain periods in the past, this region received greater rainfall, experienced more temperate seasonal variations, and maintained environmental conditions that could support much larger human populations than would be possible under current circumstances. The same environmental conditions that preserved these mummies so perfectly The extreme dryness and dramatic temperature variations that characterize the modern Gobi represent the ultimate result of the gradual climatic changes that eventually made sustained human habitation more challenging, forcing communities to adapt their lifestyles significantly, migrate to more hospitable regions, or develop entirely new forms of social organization that could function effectively under increasingly demanding environmental conditions. The cultural artifacts associated with these ancient Gobi communities suggest sophisticated knowledge systems that encompassed astronomy, mathematics, agricultural techniques specifically adapted to arid conditions, and complex social structures that facilitated long-distance trade and cultural exchange. The presence of materials and artistic influences from regions thousands of miles away indicates that these communities participated in extensive trade networks that connected them to civilizations across Asia, challenging our assumptions about the isolation and limitations that we associate with desert environments. The astronomical knowledge demonstrated by some artifacts suggests that these communities developed sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles that enabled them to navigate across vast distances, predict seasonal changes, and coordinate activities across large geographical areas. Mathematical concepts embedded in their artistic works and architectural remains indicate intellectual achievements that required sustained cultural support for educational activities and the development of abstract thinking. Moving our contemplative journey westward across the vast expanses of Central Asia, traversing landscapes that have witnessed countless human migrations and environmental transformations, we encounter the Arabian Peninsula, where the empty quarter stretches like an infinite meditation on solitude, silence, and the profound relationship between apparent emptiness and hidden fullness. This region, known to geographers and desert specialists as the Rub al-Khali, represents one of the most challenging environments anywhere on Earth. A place where sand dunes rise to heights that dwarf the tallest buildings in modern cities, where daytime temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius during summer months, where nighttime temperatures can drop dramatically even during the warmest seasons, and where rainfall is so infrequent and unpredictable that years may pass between significant precipitation events. The very name Empty Quarter seems to capture the essential character of this landscape as it exists today. A vast space apparently devoid of life, water, vegetation, or any of the resources that human communities require for sustained habitation. Modern travelers crossing this region must carry all necessary supplies, including enormous quantities of water, navigate by sophisticated technological aids, including GPS systems and satellite communication devices, and maintain constant vigilance to avoid becoming lost in an environment where landmarks are constantly shifting and where natural navigation aids are few and far between. The scale of this desert challenges human comprehension, covering an area larger than many countries and presenting seemingly endless vistas of sand dunes that shift and change according to wind patterns that operate according to their own mysterious logic. The silence in this environment can be so complete that it becomes almost tangible, a presence rather than an absence, broken only by the whisper of wind across sand and the occasional distant sound of shifting dunes that speak of geological processes operating on timescales that dwarf human existence. Yet, even the seemingly impossible landscape holds secrets that whisper of a radically different past. Evidence that challenges our fundamental assumptions about the permanence of current environmental conditions and suggests possibilities that seem almost fantastic from our contemporary perspective. Archaeological surveys conducted using modern remote sensing technologies have revealed evidence of ancient lake beds buried beneath hundreds of feet of accumulated sand, fossil river channels that once carried substantial flows of water across landscapes now characterized by extreme aridity, and the remnants of human settlements that once thrived in areas now buried beneath dunes that rival small mountains in their scale and grandeur. Ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery allow contemporary researchers to peer beneath the surface of these landscapes without disturbing the peaceful rest of buried archaeological sites, revealing ghostly outlines of human habitation in places where today only the most highly specialized desert organisms can survive. These technological capabilities have revolutionized our understanding of desert landscapes, allowing researchers to detect features that would be completely invisible to ground-based observation, while providing detailed maps of subsurface structures that guide more focused archaeological investigations. The images produced by these remote sensing technologies reveal networks of ancient river channels that once drained vast areas of the Arabian Peninsula. Lake systems that covered areas now characterized by extreme aridity, and settlement patterns that indicate much larger human populations than current environmental conditions could support. The sophistication of these ancient hydrological systems suggests that communities developed advanced understanding of water management and engineering that enabled them to thrive in conditions that were challenging even when the climate was more favorable than it is today. The limestone caves and protected rock shelters scattered throughout the Arabian Peninsula serve as natural archives that preserve evidence of human occupation extending back thousands of years into periods when the regional climate supported very different ecosystems and much larger human populations. These natural preservation sites maintain stable temperature and humidity conditions that protect organic materials from decay, while shielding archaeological deposits from disturbance by weather and later human activities. Stone tools discovered in these sites, carefully crafted for specific purposes using techniques that required considerable skill and experience, demonstrate the ingenuity and technological sophistication of communities that learned not merely to survive, but to thrive under challenging environmental conditions. The quality of tool manufacture and the sophistication of technologies represented indicate communities that had developed specialized craft traditions and maintained educational systems that transmitted technical knowledge across generations. The variety of tools discovered suggests complex subsistence strategies that took advantage of diverse resources, including plant foods, animal products, and mineral materials that require different collection and processing techniques. The presence of tools designed for specific activities such as hide processing, plant fiber preparation, and stoneworking indicates communities that had developed sophisticated material cultures adapted to local environmental conditions and resource availability. Rock art preserved in these natural galleries depicts animals and scenes that speak eloquently of environmental conditions very different from those that characterize the region today, providing visual documentation of ecosystems that supported species requiring permanent water sources and abundant vegetation. Ancient artists documented the presence of animals that are now found only hundreds of miles to the south in regions that receive significantly more rainfall, creating visual records of ecosystems that included elephants, rhinoceros, hippopotamus, and various species of antelope that require substantial water and vegetation resources. These artistic works serve simultaneously as historical documents that provide information about past environmental conditions, spiritual expressions that reveal the religious and cultural beliefs of ancient communities, and scientific records that offer detailed information about animal behavior and ecological relationships. The accuracy with which these ancient artists depicted anatomical details, behavioral characteristics, and environmental contexts demonstrates observational skills that rival those of trained naturalists. The artistic techniques employed in these works reveal sophisticated understanding of pigment preparation, surface preparation, and artistic composition that required specialized knowledge and considerable skill. The durability of these artworks, many of which remain vivid and detailed after thousands of years, demonstrates technical expertise in selecting appropriate materials and application methods that could withstand the challenging environmental conditions of desert climates. Ancient texts and oral traditions preserved by Bedouin communities throughout the Arabian Peninsula contain cultural memories that may preserve echoes of actual environmental conditions that existed in the relatively recent past, passed down through generations like precious family heirlooms that connect contemporary communities to their ancestral heritage. These traditional accounts, maintained through sophisticated oral transmission systems that ensure accuracy and continuity across generations, speak of times when the desert was less harsh and forbidding than it is today. These oral traditions describe periods when certain wells flowed more reliably and abundantly, providing water sources that could support permanent settlements and agricultural activities. They tell of specific areas that are now completely impassable, but once supported regular travel routes and even permanent or semi-permanent settlements, where communities could maintain herds of animals and practice limited agriculture during favorable seasons. The geographical knowledge preserved in these oral traditions often includes detailed information about water sources, seasonal patterns, navigation landmarks, and ecological relationships that demonstrates intimate familiarity with desert environments developed over thousands of years of accumulated experience. This traditional knowledge encompasses sophisticated understanding of weather patterns, animal behavior, plant ecology, and geological features that enable survival and even prosperity in one of Earth's most challenging environments. The transformation of the Arabian Peninsula from a more hospitable environment to its current state of extreme aridity appears to have occurred in stages, with periods of relative environmental improvement occasionally interrupting the overall trend toward greater dryness and more challenging living conditions. This pattern of gradual change, punctuated by temporary reversals, provided communities with multiple opportunities to adapt their survival strategies, to develop the remarkable desert expertise that continues to characterize Bedouin culture, and to preserve cultural knowledge about techniques for finding water, navigating across featureless terrain, and maintaining social cohesion under extremely challenging circumstances. The cyclical nature of these environmental changes suggests that the region has experienced multiple periods of relative abundance, alternating with times of greater scarcity, creating conditions that required communities to develop flexible, adaptive strategies that could function effectively under a wide range of environmental conditions. This variability may have contributed to the development of the sophisticated resource management techniques and social organization systems that characterize traditional Arabian Peninsula cultures. The traditional knowledge systems that evolved in response to these changing conditions represent some of humanity's most sophisticated adaptations to extreme environments, encompassing detailed understanding of desert ecology, resource location and management, navigation techniques, and social organization strategies that allow small groups to maintain cultural continuity while moving across vast distances in search of resources that may be widely scattered and seasonally available. Bedouin expertise in desert survival includes knowledge of weather patterns that enables prediction of rainfall and seasonal changes, understanding of plant and animal behavior that facilitates location of water sources and food resources, navigation techniques that allow accurate travel across landscapes where landmarks may be few and far between, and social organization strategies that maintain group cohesion and resource sharing during times of scarcity and uncertainty. In the Southern Hemisphere, Australia's Red Heart spreads beneath the Southern Cross like a vast canvas painted in every conceivable shade of ochre, rust, and burnt orange, creating landscapes of extraordinary beauty and profound silence that challenge human comprehension through their scale and apparent emptiness. The outback, as it exists in our contemporary world, challenges human endurance with its unique combination of extreme heat that can exceed 50 degrees Celsius, minimal and highly irregular rainfall that may not occur for years in some areas, and vast distances between reliable water sources that make travel and permanent settlement extraordinarily difficult even with modern technology and transportation systems. This landscape appears to represent one of Earth's most forbidding environments, where survival requires specialized knowledge and equipment, where the search for water can become a matter of life and death, and where the horizon extends to impossible distances across terrain that varies from rocky outcrops to sandy plains to salt lakes that shimmer like mirages under the intense Australian sun. The silence in these regions can be so complete that it becomes almost overwhelming, broken only by the occasional call of specially adapted birds or the whisper of wind across spinifex grass. Yet this landscape, which might seem to offer little of interest to human communities or scientific investigation, also holds within its ancient rocks and soil layers evidence of a dramatically different past, preserved not only in the geological record that can be read by trained scientists using sophisticated analytical techniques, but also in the oral traditions of Aboriginal communities whose cultural memory spans tens of thousands of years with remarkable consistency and accuracy that continues to astonish researchers who study traditional knowledge systems. These indigenous knowledge systems represent one of humanity's longest-running experiments in cultural preservation, maintaining detailed information about landscapes, ecosystems, environmental changes, and resource management techniques across time spans that dwarf written historical records and challenge our understanding of how human communities can maintain cultural continuity across such vast periods of time. The sophistication of these oral traditions, which incorporate multiple forms of expression, including song, story, dance, and visual art, demonstrates remarkable intellectual achievements in information storage and transmission. The Dreamtime stories of Australia's Indigenous peoples describe ancestral beings who shaped the continental landscape through their travels and activities, creating mountains and valleys through their movements, establishing water sources and seasonal patterns through their actions, and leaving behind the complex network of sacred sites that forms both the spiritual and practical geography of Aboriginal Australian culture. These narratives, maintained through sophisticated oral traditions that include elaborate song cycles, ceremonial practices, dance performances, and careful transmission protocols across countless generations, describe landscapes and waterways that existed in places now characterized by extreme aridity and apparent lifelessness. The complexity and sophistication of these oral traditions reveals intellectual achievements that required sustained cultural support for education, artistic development, and the maintenance of specialized knowledge systems that served both practical and spiritual purposes. The integration of geographical information, ecological knowledge, cultural history, and spiritual teachings in these traditions represents a holistic approach to understanding and relating to the natural world that offers valuable insights for contemporary communities seeking to develop sustainable relationships with their environments. Modern scientific research, conducted by teams of geologists, climatologists, archaeologists, and other specialists working in collaboration with Aboriginal communities, has increasingly confirmed elements of these traditional accounts, providing independent evidence that Australia's interior was indeed much more hospitable during certain periods in the relatively recent past. The convergence of traditional knowledge and contemporary scientific methods creates opportunities for enhanced understanding that neither approach could achieve independently, demonstrating the value of interdisciplinary collaboration that respects both Indigenous wisdom and modern analytical techniques. These collaborative research projects have revealed evidence of ancient lake systems, river networks, and vegetation communities that existed in areas now characterized by extreme aridity, confirming traditional accounts of ancestral travels and activities that would have been impossible under current environmental conditions. The scientific validation of elements of traditional knowledge demonstrates the accuracy of Aboriginal observations and the effectiveness of oral transmission systems in preserving detailed information across thousands of years. Lake Eyre, which exists today as a vast salt pan covering an area of approximately 9,600 square kilometers, but fills with water only during exceptional flood events that may occur decades apart, was once a permanent body of fresh water that supported diverse and abundant ecosystems, including fish populations, water birds, and extensive wetland vegetation that provided resources for human communities as well as numerous animal species. Paleoclimatic evidence indicates that during certain periods in the past 10,000 years, this region received rainfall patterns that would seem almost unbelievable from our current perspective, supporting vegetation communities and wildlife populations that would seem entirely out of place in today's arid environment. The transformation of Lake Eyre from a permanent freshwater ecosystem to its current status as an intermittent salt lake illustrates the dramatic environmental changes that have affected Australia's interior. While the preservation of cultural memories about these changes in Aboriginal oral traditions demonstrates the remarkable capacity of human communities to maintain accurate historical information across thousands of years without written records. Scientific analysis of sediment cores from Lake Eyre and surrounding areas has revealed detailed information about past climate conditions, vegetation changes, and ecosystem dynamics that confirm many elements of traditional accounts, while providing additional insights into the mechanisms and timing of environmental transformations. These studies demonstrate that the region experienced multiple periods of greater water availability, alternating with times of increased aridity, creating environmental conditions that required human and animal communities to develop flexible, adaptive strategies. The rock art galleries scattered throughout Central Australia provide visual testimony to this vanished world, offering windows into environmental conditions that have not existed for thousands of years, while demonstrating the artistic achievements of communities that had sufficient leisure time and cultural support to develop sophisticated aesthetic traditions. These ancient artworks, painted and engraved on cave walls and protected rock overhangs by artists who were careful observers of their natural surroundings, depict scenes of abundant wildlife, lush vegetation, and complex ceremonial activities taking place in landscapes that have been characterized by extreme aridity for millennia. The artistic sophistication of these works reveals communities with advanced aesthetic sensibilities and technical skills that required generations of cultural development and artistic training. The variety of artistic techniques employed, including different pigment formulations, surface preparation methods, and compositional approaches, demonstrates experimental and innovative approaches to artistic expression that continue to evolve over thousands of years. The artists who created these remarkable works possessed intimate knowledge of their environment and felt compelled to document not fantasy scenarios or purely spiritual visions, though these elements are certainly present in many works, but the actual conditions they observed and experienced in their daily lives. The accuracy with which they depicted animal anatomy, plant structures, and ecological relationships demonstrates observational skills that rival those of trained naturalists. While the artistic sophistication of their work reveals communities with sufficient leisure time and cultural support to develop advanced aesthetic traditions, the precision with which these ancient artists rendered anatomical details, behavioral characteristics, and environmental contexts suggests that art served important educational and cultural functions, in addition to its aesthetic and spiritual roles. The visual accuracy of these depictions has enabled modern scientists to identify species and ecological relationships that provide valuable information about past environmental conditions and ecosystem dynamics. The gradual transformation of Australia's interior from a more hospitable environment to its current extreme aridity appears to have been driven by the same long-term climatic cycles that affected other continents. As global weather patterns shifted over thousands of years in response to changes in solar radiation patterns, oceanic circulation systems, and atmospheric composition. as the rainfall that once supported inland Australia gradually diminished and became more irregular and unpredictable. Both human and animal communities were forced to adapt to increasingly challenging conditions or migrate toward coastal regions that remained more favorable for sustained habitation. The complexity of these climate changes involved interactions between multiple factors, including ocean temperature patterns, atmospheric circulation systems, and continental geography that scientists are still working to understand completely. The gradual nature of most changes meant that communities had time to develop adaptive strategies. But the ultimate magnitude of transformation eventually exceeded the adaptive capacity of many species and required fundamental changes in human subsistence strategies and social organization. The survival strategies developed by Aboriginal communities during this prolonged transition represent one of humanity's most successful and sophisticated adaptations to extreme environmental conditions, encompassing knowledge systems that required thousands of years of accumulated experience and careful cultural transmission to develop and maintain. The traditional knowledge that enabled these communities to thrive in the harsh Australian interior represents remarkable intellectual achievements that continue to provide valuable insights for contemporary communities facing environmental challenges. This knowledge encompasses detailed understanding of water sources, including permanent springs, seasonal pools, and underground sources that require specialized techniques to locate and access. Traditional knowledge about seasonal patterns includes sophisticated understanding of weather cycles, plant phenology, and animal behavior that enables prediction of resource availability and optimal timing for various activities, including travel, hunting, and gathering. Plant and animal behavior knowledge includes understanding of ecological relationships, life cycles, and behavioral patterns that provide essential information for survival, including location of food resources, prediction of weather changes, and identification of environmental hazards. Navigation techniques allow accurate travel across vast distances using landscape features, stellar patterns, and other natural indicators that enable communities to maintain knowledge of resource locations across territories covering thousands of square kilometers. These traditional knowledge systems also include sustainable resource management practices that ensured the long-term availability of essential resources through techniques such as controlled burning, selective harvesting, and habitat management that maintained ecosystem productivity while preventing overexploitation. Social organization structures developed by Aboriginal communities allowed maintenance of cultural cohesion while adapting to changing environmental conditions, including kinship systems that facilitated resource sharing, ceremonial practices that reinforced cultural knowledge, and decision-making processes that enabled flexible responses to environmental challenges. The integration of practical knowledge and spiritual understanding that characterizes Aboriginal culture represents a holistic approach to environmental adaptation that offers valuable insights for contemporary communities facing their own environmental challenges, demonstrating how human communities can maintain cultural continuity while adapting successfully to changing environmental conditions through patient observation, careful experimentation, and respectful relationship with natural systems. In North America, the great deserts of the Southwest tell their own compelling stories of environmental transformation and human adaptation, offering evidence of sophisticated cultures that developed remarkable achievements in regions that now present some of the most challenging conditions anywhere on the continent. The Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts, with their distinctive landscapes dominated by various species of cacti, including the iconic saguaro, that can live for hundreds of years and grow to heights exceeding 15 meters. Dramatic mountain ranges that rise abruptly from desert floors, and river valleys that support ribbons of green vegetation even in this arid environment, exist today in regions that once supported very different ecosystems characterized by greater water availability, more moderate temperatures, and sufficient moisture to sustain much larger and more diverse plant and animal communities. These contemporary desert landscapes display their own remarkable beauty and ecological sophistication, supporting communities of highly specialized plants and animals that have evolved extraordinary adaptations to extreme conditions of heat, aridity, and seasonal resource scarcity. The diversity of cactus species alone represents millions of years of evolutionary innovation in water storage, temperature regulation, and reproduction under challenging conditions, while desert animals have developed behavioral and physiological adaptations that enable survival in conditions that would quickly prove fatal to species adapted to more moderate environments. Lake Bonneville, of which the Great Salt Lake represents only a small and highly saline remnant containing less than 10% of the original lake's area, once covered vast areas of what is now Utah and Nevada, creating an inland sea that reached depths of more than 300 meters in some areas and covered approximately 50,000 square kilometers at its maximum extent during the late Pleistocene period. This ancient lake system supported complex food webs and provided abundant resources for early human communities, while creating environmental conditions that would seem almost unimaginable from our contemporary perspective of this region, as characterized by extreme aridity and high-elevation desert conditions. The scale of Lake Bonneville challenges our contemporary understanding of the region's environmental potential, as this ancient water body was larger than many modern countries and supported ecosystems that included fish populations, water bird communities, and extensive wetland vegetation that provided resources for both human communities and diverse animal populations. The lake's influence extended far beyond its immediate shoreline, creating regional climate patterns that supported more abundant precipitation and more moderate temperatures across a much larger area. The gradual evaporation of Lake Bonneville over thousands of years left behind not only the Great Salt Lake, but also extensive salt flats, ancient shoreline terraces visible on mountainsides, and sedimentary deposits that preserve detailed records of past environmental conditions and biological communities. These geological features provide scientists with natural archives that can be analyzed to reconstruct detailed histories of climate change, ecosystem dynamics, and human activities in the region. The archaeological record throughout the American Southwest reveals sophisticated cultures that developed remarkable architectural and agricultural achievements, while adapting to gradually changing environmental conditions that required continuous innovation and flexibility in response to evolving challenges. The ancestral Puebloans, whose cliff dwellings and ceremonial centers continue to grace the landscape of the Colorado Plateau, with their elegant integration of human construction and natural rock formations, demonstrated extraordinary skill in creating sustainable communities under increasingly challenging environmental conditions. These remarkable communities developed over many centuries in response to both environmental opportunities and constraints, creating cultural traditions that balanced human needs with environmental limitations, while achieving levels of architectural and artistic sophistication that continue to inspire contemporary architects and artists. The evolution of ancestral Puebloan culture demonstrates how human communities can develop increasingly sophisticated adaptive strategies while maintaining cultural continuity across generations. The cliff dwellings constructed by these communities represent some of the most remarkable architectural achievements in North American prehistory, combining advanced engineering techniques with aesthetic sensitivity and practical adaptation to challenging environmental conditions. These structures, built within natural alcoves in canyon walls, provided protection from both weather extremes and potential conflicts, while demonstrating construction techniques that rival modern engineering in their sophistication and durability. The architectural innovations developed by ancestral Puebloan communities included advanced understanding of structural engineering, material science, and environmental design. and that enabled construction of multi-story buildings in challenging locations while providing comfortable living spaces that remained cool in summer and warm in winter. The integration of defensive considerations with daily living needs demonstrates sophisticated understanding of both human social dynamics and environmental management. These remarkable communities developed ingenious water management systems that allowed them to practice agriculture in regions where modern farmers would face seemingly insurmountable challenges, even with contemporary technology and irrigation techniques. Their understanding of hydrology, soil science, and plant biology enabled development of agricultural techniques that could produce reliable harvests with minimal water inputs, while maintaining soil fertility across generations of continuous cultivation. The water management innovations developed by these communities included construction of check dams, terracing systems, and water collection facilities that captured and directed scarce rainfall to agricultural areas, while preventing soil erosion and maintaining watershed integrity. These engineering achievements required sophisticated understanding of landscape hydrology and construction techniques that enabled creation of durable infrastructure using only locally available materials and human labor. The astronomical alignments built into many of these structures reveal knowledge systems that combined practical necessity with spiritual understanding, creating buildings that served simultaneously as homes and calendars, defensive positions and temples, community centers, and observatories. The precision with which these ancient architects incorporated solar and lunar cycles into their constructions demonstrates mathematical and astronomical knowledge that required generations of careful observation and theoretical development. The integration of astronomical knowledge with architectural design enabled communities to coordinate agricultural activities with seasonal cycles, predict optimal timing for planting and harvesting, and maintain cultural calendars that synchronized religious and social activities with natural rhythms. This sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics required sustained cultural support for specialized knowledge and educational activities that transmitted complex information across generations. The gradual abandonment of some of these remarkable sites appears to have coincided with periods of extended drought and environmental stress that challenged even these highly adapted communities, suggesting that environmental changes eventually exceeded the adaptive capacity of even sophisticated cultures that had successfully managed environmental challenges for centuries. However, the knowledge and cultural traditions developed by these communities did not disappear entirely, but were carried forward by descendant populations who continued to adapt and evolve their relationship with the challenging southwestern environment. The process of site abandonment appears to have been gradual and selective rather than sudden or complete, with communities making strategic decisions about which locations to maintain and which to abandon based on changing environmental conditions and resource availability. This adaptive flexibility demonstrates sophisticated decision-making processes that balanced cultural attachment to traditional locations with practical considerations about long-term sustainability. The petroglyphs and pictographs scattered throughout the American Southwest provide another important window into this long process of environmental change and cultural adaptation, serving as natural archives that preserve information about past environmental conditions, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. These rock art galleries, created over thousands of years by different cultural groups, document changing artistic styles, spiritual beliefs, and environmental conditions while serving as both historical records and spiritual expressions that connected communities to their landscape and their ancestors. The artistic traditions represented in these works often encode practical knowledge about seasonal patterns, resource locations, and environmental conditions in symbolic forms that could be easily remembered and transmitted across generations without written language. The durability of rock art as a medium for information storage made it particularly valuable for communities that needed to preserve essential knowledge across long periods of time and potential social disruption. Animals that no longer exist in these regions are depicted alongside scenes of agricultural activities, ceremonial practices, and daily life, suggesting periods when the climate was more conducive to diverse wildlife populations and intensive human habitation. The artistic accuracy with which extinct or relocated species are depicted provides valuable information for scientists studying past ecosystems and climate conditions, while demonstrating the observational skills and artistic sophistication of ancient communities. The spiritual practices associated with many ancient southwestern cultures emphasize themes of adaptation, balance, and harmony with natural cycles, reflecting deep understanding of the relationship between human communities and their environmental surroundings that developed through thousands of years of experience living in challenging conditions. These religious and philosophical traditions often view environmental challenges as opportunities for spiritual growth and community strengthening rather than simply as problems to be solved through technological means. The ceremonial practices developed by these communities often incorporated detailed knowledge about seasonal cycles, astronomical patterns, and ecological relationships that served both spiritual and practical purposes by reinforcing cultural knowledge while strengthening social bonds and community identity. The integration of practical and spiritual knowledge in these traditions demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how human communities can maintain cultural continuity while adapting to changing environmental conditions. As we contemplate these vast transformations across multiple continents and thousands of years of human history, observing patterns that repeat and variations that reflect local conditions and cultural innovations, we begin to understand that our planet operates according to rhythms and cycles that extend far beyond the time frames that characterize human perception and memory. The study of paleoclimatology, which attempts to reconstruct past climate conditions using evidence preserved in ice cores, lake sediments, tree rings, and other natural archives, reveals that Earth has experienced numerous cycles of warming and cooling, expansion and contraction of ice sheets, and migration of climate zones across continents throughout its geological history. These discoveries emerge through the patient and meticulous work of researchers who have learned to read the complex language written in natural archives that preserve information about past environmental conditions across timescales, ranging from individual years to millions of years. Ice cores extracted from polar regions and high-altitude glaciers contain annual layers that preserve information about temperature, precipitation, atmospheric composition, and even volcanic eruptions that affected global climate patterns. Lake sediments preserve pollen grains, microscopic organisms, and chemical signatures that reveal information about past vegetation communities, ecosystem dynamics, and regional climate conditions. During the last interglacial period, which occurred roughly 125,000 years ago and lasted for several thousand years, global sea levels were significantly higher than they are today. Polar ice sheets were smaller than their current extent, and the distribution of rainfall patterns across the continents was markedly different from contemporary conditions. The Sahara experienced what scientists call green periods multiple times throughout its history, with the most recent ending only about 5,000 years ago, a time span that encompasses much of what we consider recorded human history, and demonstrates that major environmental changes have occurred within the time frame of human cultural memory. These discoveries challenge our assumptions about the stability of current environmental conditions, while providing valuable insights into the mechanisms that drive climate change and the potential responses of natural systems to changing environmental conditions. The paleoclimatic record demonstrates that dramatic environmental changes have occurred many times throughout Earth's history, often in response to relatively small changes in factors such as solar radiation patterns, atmospheric composition, or oceanic circulation systems. The scientific techniques used to reconstruct past climate conditions continue to become more sophisticated and precise, allowing researchers to develop increasingly detailed understanding of how climate systems respond to various influences and how these responses affect ecosystems and human communities. Computer models that simulate past climate conditions help scientists understand the mechanisms that drive environmental change while testing our understanding of how these systems might respond to future changes in atmospheric composition and other factors. Satellite technology and other remote sensing capabilities have revolutionized our ability to peer beneath the surface of desert landscapes and other environments, revealing features that would be completely invisible to ground-based observation while providing detailed maps of subsurface structures that guide archaeological investigations and environmental research. Radar imagery has detected ancient river channels beneath the Sahara, mapping the courses of waterways that once carried snowmelt from mountain ranges and seasonal rains from monsoon systems across landscapes now characterized by extreme aridity. These paleorivers, now completely buried beneath hundreds of feet of accumulated sand, provide a skeletal map of the hydrological system that once supported the Green Sahara, while demonstrating the scale of environmental changes that have affected this region. Similar techniques applied to other desert regions have revealed comparable evidence of dramatic environmental change, including ancient lake systems, river networks, and settlement patterns that indicate much larger human populations than current environmental conditions could support. In the Arabian Peninsula, satellite imagery has identified the remnants of ancient lake systems and river networks that once connected regions now separated by vast expanses of sand, while ground-penetrating radar has detected buried archaeological sites that preserve evidence of human communities that thrived under very different environmental conditions. In Australia, remote sensing technologies have detected subsurface features that correspond remarkably well to the landscape descriptions preserved in Aboriginal oral traditions, providing scientific confirmation of traditional knowledge, while demonstrating the accuracy of cultural memory preserved across thousands of years. The interdisciplinary collaboration required to interpret this evidence brings together specialists from geology, archaeology, climatology, anthropology, linguistics, and other fields, each contributing unique pieces to a vast puzzle that spans millions of years of Earth history and encompasses the entire story of human presence on our planet. Computer models allow researchers to simulate past climate conditions with increasing sophistication, creating digital reconstructions of green Saharas, temperate Gobi regions, and moderate Australian interiors that help us understand not just what environmental conditions existed in the past, but also the mechanisms of change that might inform our understanding of future possibilities. The collaborative nature of this research, bringing together specialists from different disciplines and often different countries, creates new models for international cooperation and knowledge sharing that transcend political boundaries and cultural divisions while advancing human understanding of environmental change and adaptation. The ancient civilizations we study today represent human achievements that similarly transcended the political and cultural boundaries of their time, reminding us that some aspects of human experience and accomplishment are truly universal and speak to fundamental characteristics of human nature that persist across time and cultural differences. Contemporary climate science, informed by our growing understanding of past environmental changes documented through research in desert regions and other environments around the world, provides increasingly sophisticated tools for anticipating and preparing for future transformations that may affect human communities. The paleoclimatic record preserved in desert landscapes and other natural archives serves as a vast database of information about how climate systems respond to various influences, offering insights that can inform current policy decisions, technological development priorities, and social adaptation strategies. The relationship between environmental change and human migration patterns documented in the archaeological record of ancient desert civilizations, provides valuable historical context for understanding contemporary population movements and the challenges faced by communities adapting to changing environmental conditions. The strategies that allowed ancient communities to maintain cultural continuity while adapting to evolving circumstances offer potential models for addressing modern challenges related to environmental adaptation, sustainable development, and the preservation of cultural knowledge during periods of rapid change. Across cultures separated by vast distances, different time periods, and apparently insurmountable barriers to communication, we find remarkably similar stories and traditions that may preserve folk memories of actual environmental changes and historical events that affected human communities throughout the world. The legend of Atlantis, whether understood as historical fact, symbolic truth, or literary creation designed to convey philosophical ideas, speaks to a universal human recognition that civilizations rise and transform, that what seems permanent and unchanging is actually part of a larger cycle of change and renewal that operates on timescales longer than individual human memory. Many mythological traditions from around the world describe great floods that reshaped the landscape, lost cities that disappeared beneath rising waters or advancing sands, golden ages when the earth was more generous with its gifts and supported larger populations with greater ease, and periods of abundance followed by times of scarcity and challenge that required communities to adapt their ways of life. These narratives often locate paradise or ideal societies in regions that are now characterized by challenging environmental conditions, suggesting that cultural memory may preserve echoes of actual periods when these areas were more hospitable to human habitation and cultural development. The flood narratives found in cultures around the world, from the biblical account of Noah's Ark to the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, to similar stories preserved in traditions from Australia, the Americas, Africa, and other regions, may represent cultural memories of actual climatic events that had profound impacts on human communities throughout the world. The end of the last ice age involved massive changes in sea level and precipitation patterns that would have appeared catastrophic from the perspective of human communities experiencing them, potentially providing the historical basis for flood myths that became incorporated into religious and cultural traditions. Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories describe the rainbow serpent and other ancestral beings creating waterways and bringing life throughout the continent, traveling across vast landscapes and leaving behind rivers, lakes, springs, and the complex network of sacred sites that forms the spiritual geography of Aboriginal culture. These creation narratives may preserve cultural memories of periods when Australia's interior was indeed laced with permanent water sources and supported diverse ecosystems that included many species no longer found in these regions. The sophistication of these oral traditions, which integrate geographical information, ecological knowledge, cultural history, and spiritual teachings, demonstrates remarkable intellectual achievements that required sustained cultural support for education and artistic development. The accuracy with which these traditions preserve information about landscape features and environmental conditions suggests that they serve important practical functions in addition to their spiritual and cultural roles. Similarly, Native American traditions from the southwestern United States describe times when the desert bloomed like a garden, when certain areas now characterized by extreme aridity supported abundant plant and animal life, and when seasonal patterns provided more reliable access to water and other essential resources. These oral traditions often include detailed knowledge about seasonal cycles, water source locations, and ecological relationships that suggests direct observation of environmental conditions different from those that exist today. The preservation of detailed environmental knowledge in these oral traditions demonstrates the effectiveness of traditional education systems in maintaining practical information across generations, while integrating this knowledge with cultural in spiritual teachings that give meaning and context to technical information. The holistic nature of these knowledge systems offers valuable insights for contemporary communities seeking to develop sustainable relationships with their environments. In the Middle East, ancient texts and oral traditions describe the Garden of Eden and other paradisiacal locations in terms that have led some scholars to locate these mythical places in regions that are now part of the Arabian Desert or other arid areas that currently seem incapable of supporting the abundant vegetation and wildlife described in these accounts. While these accounts clearly include mythological and symbolic elements that serve spiritual and cultural functions beyond literal historical description, they may also preserve cultural memories of periods when these regions supported more lush vegetation and diverse wildlife than would be possible under current environmental conditions. The integration of historical memory, spiritual teaching, and practical knowledge in these traditions demonstrates sophisticated approaches to information preservation that served multiple functions within ancient communities while maintaining cultural continuity across generations. The symbolic and metaphorical elements in these traditions often encode practical information about environmental conditions, resource management techniques, and social organization strategies in forms that could be easily remembered and transmitted through oral tradition. These mythological echoes serve multiple important functions in human culture, operating simultaneously as historical documents that preserve information about past events and environmental conditions, spiritual teachings that provide guidance for understanding the relationship between human communities and the natural world, and practical guides for managing resources and adapting to environmental challenges. They remind us that our ancestors were careful and sophisticated observers of the natural world, capable of recognizing and preserving knowledge about environmental patterns that operated on timescales longer than individual human lifetimes. The process by which environmental knowledge becomes encoded in mythological and spiritual traditions represents one of humanity's most sophisticated information storage and transmission systems, demonstrating remarkable cultural innovations that enabled preservation of essential knowledge across thousands of years without written language or technological storage systems. Through story, song, ceremony, visual art, and other forms of cultural expression, communities developed methods for preserving and transmitting essential knowledge across generations, ensuring that hard-won understanding about climate patterns, resource availability, survival strategies, and social organization would not be lost, even during periods of rapid change or social disruption. The effectiveness of these traditional knowledge preservation systems is demonstrated by the accuracy with which many oral traditions preserve information about environmental conditions, geographical features, and historical events that can be verified through independent scientific investigation. The convergence of traditional knowledge and contemporary scientific findings provides compelling evidence for the reliability of human cultural memory when supported by appropriate social institutions and educational practices. The spiritual traditions that emerged from desert environments often emphasize themes of transformation, endurance, patience, and the discovery of essential truths through the experience of apparent scarcity or limitation that strips away superficial concerns and reveals fundamental principles governing human existence. These religious and philosophical insights suggest that challenging environmental conditions can serve as catalysts for deeper understanding of fundamental principles that govern both individual human lives and the organization of human communities in relationship to their natural surroundings. The wisdom traditions that developed in desert environments often view apparent emptiness and simplicity as opportunities for spiritual insight, rather than as problems to be solved through technological intervention. This perspective offers valuable insights for contemporary communities facing environmental challenges, suggesting that adaptive responses might focus on developing deeper understanding of essential needs and fundamental relationships, rather than simply attempting to maintain current consumption patterns through technological solutions. As we contemplate the philosophical implications of these vast transformations and the evidence for sophisticated human adaptations to changing environmental conditions throughout history, we are confronted with profound questions that extend far beyond purely academic or scientific concerns and touch upon fundamental aspects of human existence and our relationship with the natural world. The story of civilizations that once flourished in what are now desert regions offers remarkable insights into the nature of impermanence, the rhythm of change, and the extraordinary adaptability of human communities when faced with evolving environmental circumstances that require creative and flexible responses. These ancient communities demonstrate conclusively that human ingenuity and creativity have always represented our species' greatest tools for adaptation and survival, enabling communities to not only survive environmental challenges, but to use these challenges as opportunities for innovation and cultural development. From the sophisticated water management systems developed by ancestral Puebloan communities to the astronomical knowledge embedded in their architectural alignments, from the complex trade networks that once connected communities across what is now the Gobi Desert, to the sustainable resource management practices preserved in Aboriginal Australian traditions. These cultures show us repeatedly that environmental challenges can inspire remarkable innovation and cultural achievement rather than simply representing obstacles to human flourishing. The patience and long-term thinking required for successful adaptation to gradually changing environmental conditions offer lessons that extend far beyond purely practical considerations about resource management or technological development, suggesting fundamental approaches to living that emphasize careful observation of natural patterns, respect for the complex relationships that connect all elements of ecosystems, and the importance of maintaining cultural knowledge and social cohesion across multiple generations. The communities that thrived in regions now characterized as extreme environments developed cultural values and social practices that emphasized qualities such as patience, endurance, cooperation, and respect for natural limits that enabled them to maintain sustainable relationships with their environments while achieving remarkable cultural and technological accomplishments. These values and practices offer valuable insights for contemporary communities seeking to develop sustainable approaches to environmental challenges. The gradual nature of most major environmental changes means that successful adaptation often occurs over multiple generations, requiring sophisticated cultural mechanisms for preserving and transmitting essential knowledge across time periods that exceed individual human lifespans. The oral traditions, artistic expressions, ceremonial practices, and educational systems that allowed ancient communities to maintain crucial information about their changing environments represent remarkably effective technologies for ensuring that survival-critical knowledge would not be lost during periods of environmental stress or social disruption. These cultural knowledge preservation systems demonstrate remarkable intellectual achievements that enabled human communities to maintain practical understanding of complex environmental systems while integrating this knowledge with spiritual teachings and social practices that gave meaning and context to technical information. The holistic nature of these knowledge systems offers valuable models for contemporary education and cultural development that seek to integrate scientific understanding with ethical values and spiritual insights. Perhaps most importantly for our contemporary situation, these vanished civilizations teach us about resilience and adaptability without despair or fatalism, demonstrating that human communities possess remarkable capacities for creative adaptation when faced with changing circumstances that require new approaches to fundamental challenges of survival and cultural continuity. They remind us that change represents a natural and inevitable aspect of earthly existence, that our planet operates as a living, dynamic system that transforms continuously across geological time, and that human communities can participate creatively and sustainably in these transformations rather than simply being passive victims of environmental change. The archaeological evidence for these transformations also offers valuable perspective on the temporal scales involved in environmental change, helping us understand that while individual human lifetimes provide only brief glimpses of larger patterns, the cumulative effect of scientific research and historical study allows us to perceive rhythms of change that operate over thousands and millions of years. This expanded temporal perspective can provide both intellectual understanding and emotional comfort, reminding us that current environmental challenges, while serious and requiring thoughtful responses, represent part of larger patterns that our planet has experienced many times throughout its long history. The recognition that environmental conditions have changed dramatically throughout Earth's history, and that human communities have successfully adapted to these changes many times in the past, offers both perspective on current challenges and hope for future resilience, based on documented examples of successful adaptation and innovation. The archaeological record provides numerous examples of communities that not only survived environmental changes, but used them as opportunities for technological innovation, social development, artistic achievement, and spiritual insight that enhanced their quality of life, while ensuring cultural continuity across generations. The desert landscapes that preserve evidence of these ancient civilizations also serve as natural laboratories for studying resilience in its many forms and manifestations, offering opportunities to observe how different forms of life adapt to extreme conditions through biological, technological, and cultural innovations. The plants and animals that thrive in modern desert environments have evolved remarkable strategies for surviving in conditions of extreme water scarcity, dramatic temperature variation, and limited resource availability, offering biological models for technologies and social structures that might help contemporary human communities prepare for their own environmental challenges and uncertainties. The study of these natural adaptations has inspired the development of biomimetic technologies that attempt to copy successful biological strategies for human applications, demonstrating how scientific observation of natural systems can lead to practical innovations that improve human capabilities while reducing environmental impact. Solar panel designs based on plant leaf structures that maximize energy capture while minimizing heat buildup. Water collection systems inspired by the surface structures of desert beetles that can harvest moisture from humid air, and building ventilation techniques that mimic the sophisticated air circulation systems found in termite mounds, all represent contemporary examples of learning from natural systems that have been refined through millions of years of evolutionary experimentation. The silence and apparent emptiness that characterize many desert environments create conditions particularly conducive to contemplation, reflection, and the kind of deep thinking that allows for recognition of patterns and relationships that might remain hidden in more complex or distracting settings. Many spiritual and philosophical traditions have recognized deserts as places of transformation and revelation, where the removal of external distractions and superficial comforts allows for deeper understanding of essential truths about existence, consciousness, and the fundamental principles that govern both individual lives and human communities. The communities that once thrived in these regions may have developed particularly refined approaches to questions about the relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. Learning to find abundance within apparent scarcity, meaning within apparent emptiness, and spiritual fulfillment through direct engagement with the fundamental forces and cycles that govern all life on Earth. The wisdom traditions that emerged from desert environments often emphasize the importance of patience, endurance, careful observation, and the recognition of sacred presence within the ordinary circumstances of daily life. Modern communities that continue to inhabit desert regions around the world demonstrate that the human capacity for creative adaptation and innovation in response to environmental challenges continues to evolve and develop, showing that traditional knowledge systems can be maintained and updated while adapting to contemporary circumstances. Bedouin communities in the Arabian Peninsula, Aboriginal groups in Australia, indigenous communities in the American Southwest, and other traditional peoples have all maintained sophisticated knowledge systems while adapting to modern economic, political, and social conditions, demonstrating that cultural wisdom about environmental adaptation can be preserved and transmitted across generations while remaining relevant to contemporary challenges. The technologies being developed today for application in desert environments, from solar energy systems that take advantage of abundant sunshine to water harvesting techniques that can capture moisture from minimal rainfall, to building designs that provide cooling without mechanical systems, represent contemporary examples of the same innovative spirit that drove ancient communities to develop sophisticated water management systems, astronomical observation techniques, and sustainable resource use practices that allowed them to thrive in challenging conditions for hundreds or thousands of years. These contemporary technological developments demonstrate that human creativity continues to find ways to work with, rather than against, environmental realities, developing solutions that take advantage of local conditions and resources rather than attempting to overcome environmental limitations through energy-intensive technologies that require resources from distant locations. The principles underlying these sustainable technologies often reflect the same understanding of natural systems and respect for environmental limits that characterize the most successful ancient adaptations to challenging environments. As we contemplate the evidence for these lost civilizations and the lessons they offer for understanding environmental change and human adaptation, we might also reflect thoughtfully on what aspects of our own contemporary civilization might be preserved for future discovery and study, considering how our current achievements and failures might appear to researchers investigating our culture thousands of years from now. The cities, transportation networks, and monuments that seem so solid and permanent from our current perspective will eventually be subject to the same processes of environmental change and geological transformation that buried the ancient settlements archaeologists study today. This recognition can inspire both intellectual humility and a deeper sense of connection to the larger human story that extends far beyond our individual lifetimes and immediate circumstances, reminding us that we represent one chapter in an ongoing narrative of human adaptation and cultural development that extends backward through countless generations and forward into an equally vast future. Understanding that we participate in patterns of change and adaptation that have characterized human existence since the earliest emergence of our species can provide perspective on contemporary challenges while inspiring appreciation for the remarkable achievements of human communities across time and around the world. The scientific methods and technologies that allow contemporary researchers to detect and study buried civilizations represent remarkable achievements in their own right, demonstrating human ingenuity in developing tools for understanding the past and predicting future possibilities while expanding our capabilities for observing and analyzing natural systems. The development of ground-penetrating radar, satellite archaeology, radiocarbon dating, computer modeling, and other analytical techniques has opened entirely new windows into human history, allowing us to perceive patterns and connections that would have been completely invisible to earlier generations of researchers. These technological capabilities also suggest exciting possibilities for future discoveries that may further revolutionize our understanding of human history and environmental change. As remote sensing technologies become even more sophisticated and archaeological techniques continue to evolve in response to new opportunities and challenges, we may well uncover evidence of additional ancient civilizations in regions where we currently assume human habitation was minimal or impossible, potentially rewriting significant portions of human history and our understanding of the relationship between environmental conditions and cultural development. The collaborative nature of modern archaeological and climatological research, bringing together specialists from multiple disciplines and often multiple countries, creates new models for international cooperation and knowledge sharing that transcend political boundaries and cultural divisions while advancing human understanding of environmental change and adaptation. The ancient civilizations we study today represent human achievements that similarly transcended the political and cultural boundaries of their time, reminding us that some aspects of human experience and accomplishment speak to fundamental characteristics of our species that persist across time and cultural differences. Contemporary climate science, informed by our growing understanding of past environmental changes documented in desert regions and other environments around the world, provides increasingly sophisticated tools for anticipating and preparing for future transformations that may affect human communities, offering insights that can inform policy decisions while inspiring technological and social innovations that enhance human resilience and environmental sustainability. The paleoclimatic record serves as a vast database of information about how climate systems respond to various influences, providing natural experiments that test our understanding of environmental change while offering guidance for future adaptation strategies. As we approach the gentle conclusion of our contemplative journey through these vast landscapes of possibility and historical transformation, drifting like peaceful observers through both space and time, we might pause to appreciate the profound silence that characterizes desert environments during the quiet hours of night. This silence represents far more than the mere absence of sound. Rather, it constitutes a positive presence, a quality of deep stillness that allows subtle sounds to become audible and creates space for the kind of reflection and inner awareness that can lead to genuine insight and understanding of our place within the larger patterns that govern existence. The night sky above desert regions, unpolluted by artificial light and clearly visible through the exceptionally clear atmosphere that characterizes arid environments, connects us directly to the same stellar patterns that provided navigation aids and seasonal calendars for the ancient communities that once thrived in these landscapes during periods of greater abundance. The constellations that wheel slowly overhead tonight are precisely the same ones that guided travelers across green Saharas, provided astronomical references for ancestral Puebloan architects, and inspired the spiritual traditions of Aboriginal Australians, whose cultural knowledge encompasses tens of thousands of years of careful sky observation. This astronomical continuity creates a direct and immediate connection between contemporary observers and the human experiences preserved in archaeological sites around the world, reminding us that we share fundamental curiosities, hopes, fears, and aspirations. With communities separated from us by thousands of years and dramatic environmental transformations, the same sense of wonder at the vastness of the universe, the same practical need for navigation and seasonal timing, and the same spiritual inspiration derived from contemplating the cosmos continue to motivate human communities today, just as they did for our ancestors living under very different environmental conditions. The minerals that create the distinctive and often spectacular colors of desert landscapes, the iron oxides that paint rocks and sand in countless shades of red, orange, and yellow, the salt deposits that create brilliant white expanses in dried lake beds, the quartz crystals that give sand its characteristic glittering appearance under sunlight and moonlight, are themselves geological records of ancient environmental conditions that prevailed when these regions experienced very different climate patterns and supported very different ecosystems. Each individual grain of sand visible in a desert landscape has traveled vast distances across continents and through geological time, worn smooth by countless episodes of wind and water transport that span millions of years, carrying within its crystalline structure the accumulated memory of mountains and riverbeds, ancient beaches and prehistoric storms, volcanic eruptions, and the slow processes of chemical weathering that gradually break down even the hardest rocks into particles small enough to be carried by wind across thousands of miles. The journey of each grain tells a story of transformation that mirrors the larger patterns of change we have been contemplating throughout our gentle exploration of these landscapes. From its origin in granite mountains or sandstone cliffs, through episodes of erosion and transport by rivers and glaciers, to its current resting place in desert dunes that shift and change according to wind patterns. Each grain has participated in the great cycles of destruction and creation that characterize all geological processes operating on our planet. The geological formations visible in desert regions provide spectacular visual testimony to the vast timescales involved in planetary change and the powerful forces that have shaped Earth's surface throughout its history, creating natural museums that display millions of years of environmental change in layers of rock that can be read like pages in a vast book. The layered rock formations exposed in canyon walls and mesa faces represent millions of years of deposition, erosion, and transformation, each distinct stratum representing a specific chapter in our planet's ongoing geological autobiography. These rock layers contain fossils that preserve evidence of ancient life forms, mineral deposits that indicate past climate conditions, and chemical signatures that reveal information about atmospheric composition and oceanic chemistry during different periods in Earth's history. The study of these geological archives has revolutionized our understanding of environmental change, demonstrating that our planet has experienced numerous dramatic transformations that dwarf anything recorded in human history, while providing insights into the mechanisms that drive these changes. The remarkable adaptation strategies visible in contemporary desert ecosystems offer profound insights into the general principles that govern survival and success in challenging environments, demonstrating how life forms can develop innovative solutions to problems that initially appear insurmountable. Desert plants have evolved numerous ingenious techniques for conserving water and surviving extreme temperatures, from waxy surfaces that dramatically reduce evaporation rates to extensive root systems that can access underground water sources located many meters below the surface. These botanical innovations include specialized photosynthetic processes that operate efficiently at high temperatures while minimizing water loss, reproductive strategies that take advantage of rare and unpredictable rainfall events to complete entire life cycles in brief periods, and structural adaptations that provide protection from extreme heat while maximizing the capture of scarce moisture from fog, dew, and brief precipitation events. Desert animals demonstrate equally remarkable adaptations that allow them to thrive under conditions that would quickly prove fatal to species adapted to more moderate environments, developing behavioral modifications that allow them to avoid extreme temperatures by remaining inactive during the hottest parts of the day. Physiological changes that enable extraordinarily efficient water conservation and heat regulation. And social behaviors that help individuals locate resources and avoid dangers in environments where both food and water may be widely scattered and difficult to find. These biological adaptations represent millions of years of evolutionary experimentation, testing countless strategies for survival under extreme conditions while gradually refining the most successful approaches through natural selection processes that favor innovations enhancing survival and reproduction. The diversity of successful strategies visible in contemporary desert ecosystems demonstrates the remarkable creativity of natural processes in developing solutions to environmental challenges. The study of these natural adaptations has inspired the development of biomimetic technologies that attempt to copy successful biological strategies for human applications, creating innovations that improve human capabilities while reducing environmental impact through designs that work with, rather than against, natural processes. Solar panel designs based on plant leaf structures that maximize energy capture while minimizing heat buildup represent applications of botanical principles to human technology, while water collection systems inspired by the surface structures of desert beetles demonstrate how careful observation of natural systems can lead to practical innovations that address human needs. Building ventilation techniques that mimic the sophisticated air circulation systems found in termite mounds represent another example of learning from natural systems that have been refined through millions of years of evolutionary experimentation, creating architectural solutions that provide comfortable living conditions with minimal energy input by taking advantage of natural air circulation patterns and temperature differences. The seasonal patterns that govern desert ecosystems, while often less obvious and dramatic than those characteristic of more temperate regions, create their own distinctive rhythms of renewal, dormancy, and patient waiting for favorable conditions that mirror the larger patterns of environmental change we have been exploring throughout our contemplative journey. The brief periods when desert regions receive significant rainfall can transform landscapes dramatically and almost instantaneously. With dormant seeds that may have waited years for sufficient moisture suddenly sprouting into spectacular carpets of wildflowers that bloom, reproduce, and complete their life cycles in a matter of weeks. Dry washes that may remain empty for years suddenly fill with temporary streams that support brief explosions of aquatic life. While normally hidden animal populations emerge from underground burrows and hidden shelters to take full advantage of suddenly abundant resources, demonstrating the remarkable capacity of desert life forms to respond quickly and effectively to favorable conditions when they occur. These seasonal transformations remind us that apparent dormancy often represents a state of patient preparation and resource conservation that allows rapid and effective response when environmental conditions become favorable for growth and reproduction, suggesting that periods of apparent inactivity may actually involve important preparatory processes that enable future success. The ancient communities that once thrived in regions now characterized as extreme deserts may have developed cultural practices and social rhythms that mirrored these natural patterns, alternating between periods of intensive activity and cultural production and periods of contemplative rest and knowledge consolidation. The archaeological sites preserved in desert environments often display remarkable engineering achievements that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of environmental conditions and innovative approaches to the practical challenges of creating comfortable and sustainable human habitations in demanding climates. The careful orientation of buildings to take advantage of cooling winds while providing protection from sandstorms and extreme temperatures demonstrates detailed knowledge of local climate patterns and air circulation systems that required generations of observation and experimentation to develop. The ingenious design of water collection and storage systems that could capture and preserve scarce rainfall for use during extended dry periods represents sophisticated understanding of hydrology, engineering, and materials science that enabled communities to maintain reliable water supplies even during periods of extreme drought. These systems often incorporated multiple collection methods, including rooftop catchment, ground-level collection areas, and underground storage facilities that minimized evaporation while preventing contamination. The thoughtful selection of construction materials that provide effective insulation against both heat and cold demonstrates understanding of thermal properties, local resource availability, and construction techniques that enabled creation of buildings that remained comfortable throughout the extreme temperature variations that characterize desert climates. These architectural innovations often incorporated passive cooling techniques that took advantage of natural air circulation patterns, thermal mass properties of local materials, and strategic placement of openings that maximized comfort while minimizing resource requirements. The artistic and spiritual traditions associated with many ancient desert cultures often reflect profound connections to the natural world and sophisticated understanding of the complex relationships that connect human communities to their environmental surroundings, demonstrating how practical knowledge about survival and resource management became integrated with aesthetic expression and spiritual understanding. These cultural expressions frequently incorporate careful observations about astronomical cycles that govern seasonal changes, detailed knowledge about the behavior patterns of local plant and animal species, and deep appreciation for the subtle beauty that can be found in landscapes that might initially appear barren or forbidding to uninformed observers. The symbolic systems and artistic conventions developed by these cultures often encode practical knowledge about environmental conditions, resource locations, seasonal patterns, and survival techniques in forms that could be easily remembered and transmitted across generations through oral tradition, artistic practice, and ceremonial activities that combined practical education with spiritual significance and aesthetic enjoyment. This integration of practical and spiritual knowledge demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how human communities can maintain cultural continuity while adapting to challenging environmental conditions. The preservation of these artistic traditions in the harsh conditions of desert environments testifies to both the durability of the materials and techniques employed, and the importance these communities placed on maintaining cultural expression even under challenging circumstances, suggesting that the human drive to create beauty and meaning transcends immediate survival concerns and represents a fundamental aspect of human nature that persists even under extreme conditions. As we settle into the peaceful silence that surrounds these final contemplations, allowing our consciousness to expand beyond immediate concerns and embrace the vast perspectives offered by our journey through deep time and across continents, we might reflect on the ways that understanding these ancient stories and archaeological discoveries enriches our own relationship with the natural world and enhances our appreciation for the remarkable adaptability and creativity that characterizes human communities when faced with environmental challenges that require innovative responses and long-term adaptive strategies. The recognition that landscapes we habitually consider permanent and unchanging are actually participants in an ongoing dance of transformation that operates according to rhythms and timescales that extend far beyond human perception, can inspire both intellectual humility and a profound sense of participation in processes much larger and more significant than our individual lives and immediate concerns. This expanded perspective can provide comfort during times of environmental uncertainty, while inspiring appreciation for the remarkable resilience that characterizes both human communities and natural ecosystems when faced with changing conditions that require adaptive responses. Understanding our place within these vast patterns of change and continuity can help us develop more realistic expectations about the nature of environmental challenges, while inspiring confidence in human capabilities for creative adaptation based on documented examples of successful responses to dramatic environmental changes throughout history. The archaeological record demonstrates repeatedly that human communities possessed remarkable capacities for innovation and cultural development that can be activated when circumstances require new approaches to fundamental challenges of survival and cultural continuity. The evening stars that shine down upon desert landscapes tonight are precisely the same celestial beacons that provided light, guidance, and inspiration for ancient travelers crossing these regions during periods when they supported very different ecosystems and much larger human populations, creating a direct astronomical connection that transcends the vast expanses of time that separate us from these ancient communities. This stellar continuity creates an immediate and tangible link between contemporary observers and the human experiences preserved in archaeological sites around the world, reminding us that we share fundamental hopes, fears, curiosities, and aspirations with communities separated from us by thousands of years and dramatic environmental transformations. The gentle wind that moves across desert landscapes, sculpting sand dunes and carrying the subtle scents of desert plants across vast distances, connects us physically and immediately to the same atmospheric systems and weather patterns that supported ancient communities and shaped the environmental conditions they experienced throughout their daily lives. This Direct sensory connection to the natural forces that influenced past civilizations helps us understand that we remain integral participants in the same planetary systems and ecological relationships that have always governed life on Earth. The silence of the desert night, broken only by the soft whisper of wind across sand and stone, and the occasional distant calls of nocturnal animals perfectly adapted to these conditions, creates ideal conditions for reflection on the deeper patterns and principles that connect all life on Earth across time and space, enabling recognition of the fundamental interconnectedness that links all aspects of the natural world in an intricate web of relationships and dependencies. In this profound quietude, surrounded by landscapes that have witnessed countless transformations and adaptations across geological time, we can appreciate both the remarkable resilience of life in its countless forms and manifestations and the fundamental interconnectedness that characterizes all natural systems. Recognizing that the apparent separateness of individual organisms and communities represents only a surface appearance that conceals deeper unities and relationships. The gradual revelation of these hidden histories through patient scientific research reminds us that truth often emerges slowly and requires sustained commitment to careful observation, rigorous analysis, and the intellectual humility to revise our understanding as new evidence becomes available through continued investigation. The ancient communities that once flourished in what are now desert regions developed these same essential qualities, learning to read subtle environmental signals with extraordinary skill and to adapt their cultural practices and technological capabilities accordingly over many generations. The patience and careful observation required for successful adaptation to changing environmental conditions offer valuable lessons for contemporary communities facing their own environmental challenges, suggesting that sustainable responses to environmental change require long-term thinking, careful attention to natural patterns, and willingness to modify cultural practices and technological approaches based on accumulating evidence about environmental conditions and trends. The preservation of evidence from these ancient civilizations in the dry conditions that characterize modern desert environments demonstrates that the apparent harshness of these landscapes also offers a kind of natural protection. Maintaining records of past human achievements and environmental conditions that might have been lost or degraded in more humid environments, where organic materials decompose rapidly, and archaeological sites may be disturbed by vegetation growth or frequent precipitation. This preservation paradox, the recognition that environmental conditions challenging for contemporary life can also protect and maintain evidence of past life and cultural achievement, reminds us that apparent opposites often contain hidden connections and complementary relationships that become visible only through careful study and patient observation over extended periods of time, suggesting that challenges and opportunities often exist together in complex relationships that require nuanced understanding rather than simple categorization. The artistic achievements preserved in desert archaeological sites, from rock paintings that depict vanished ecosystems with scientific accuracy and aesthetic sophistication, to architectural innovations that respond elegantly to environmental challenges while creating spaces of genuine beauty and cultural significance, remind us that human creativity and the drive to create meaningful beauty flourish even under the most challenging circumstances and resource limitations. The persistence of the human impulse to create art, to express meaning through visual and symbolic forms, and to construct buildings and other structures that serve simultaneously practical and aesthetic purposes, appears to represent a fundamental aspect of human nature that transcends environmental limitations and cultural boundaries, continuing to inspire contemporary communities facing their own environmental challenges to develop innovative solutions that combine practical effectiveness with genuine beauty and cultural meaning. These artistic traditions demonstrate that the human capacity for creative expression represents more than mere decoration or luxury, but serves essential functions in maintaining cultural identity, transmitting practical knowledge, and providing meaning and inspiration that enable communities to maintain hope and purpose, even during periods of environmental stress and uncertainty. The integration of artistic expression with practical knowledge and spiritual understanding, visible in many ancient desert cultures, offers valuable models for contemporary communities seeking to develop holistic approaches to environmental challenges. As the night deepens around our contemplative journey, and the profound silence of the desert landscape becomes even more complete and enveloping, we can allow ourselves to feel the deep peace that emerges from recognizing our place within this vast continuum of human experience and environmental change that extends backward through geological time and forward into an equally vast future that will undoubtedly bring its own transformations and opportunities for adaptation. The communities that once called these regions home during periods of greater environmental abundance faced challenges and opportunities that parallel many aspects of our own contemporary situation, developing practical wisdom and cultural knowledge that continues to offer valuable insights for modern communities seeking to create sustainable relationships with their environmental surroundings while maintaining cultural traditions and social cohesion in the face of changing conditions. The rhythmic breathing of the Earth itself, cycling between different climate states and environmental conditions over geological time periods that dwarf human civilizations, provides an essential context for understanding both the magnitude of environmental changes that have occurred throughout planetary history and the remarkable resilience that characterizes life in its countless forms and manifestations when faced with changing conditions that require adaptive responses. This planetary breathing, operating according to timescales and rhythms that extend far beyond human lifespans and cultural memory, reminds us that current environmental conditions represent just one temporary moment in an ongoing story of transformation and adaptation that will continue long after our own civilization has become part of the archaeological record for future researchers to discover and interpret, suggesting that our current environmental challenges, while serious and requiring thoughtful responses, represent part of natural patterns that have characterized Earth throughout its history. The evidence for sophisticated ancient civilizations in regions now characterized as extreme deserts offers profound hope and encouragement by demonstrating that human communities possess remarkable capacities for innovation, adaptation, and cultural achievement that can be activated and developed when circumstances require creative responses to environmental challenges and resource limitations. The archaeological record provides numerous inspiring examples of communities that not only survive dramatic environmental changes, but use these challenges as catalysts for developing new forms of technological innovation, social organization, artistic expression, and spiritual understanding that enhance their quality of life, while ensuring cultural continuity across generations. These historical examples demonstrate that environmental challenges can serve as catalysts for human creativity and cultural development, rather than simply representing obstacles to human flourishing, suggesting that contemporary communities facing environmental challenges might view these as opportunities for innovation and cultural growth, rather than merely as problems requiring technological solutions. The spiritual and philosophical traditions that emerged from desert environments often emphasize themes of transformation, endurance, patience, and the discovery of essential truths through direct experience of challenging conditions that strip away superficial concerns and reveal fundamental principles governing both individual consciousness and community life. These religious and philosophical insights suggest that demanding environmental conditions can serve as powerful catalysts for deeper understanding of the essential principles that govern sustainable human communities and meaningful individual existence. The wisdom traditions that developed in response to desert conditions often emphasize the importance of recognizing abundance within apparent scarcity, finding meaning within apparent emptiness, and discovering spiritual fulfillment through direct engagement with the fundamental forces and cycles that govern all existence. These perspectives offer valuable insights for contemporary communities seeking to develop sustainable approaches to environmental challenges that address not only practical needs, but also the spiritual and cultural dimensions of human existence. The scientific methods and technological capabilities that reveal evidence of these ancient civilizations represent remarkable achievements that demonstrate the continued evolution of human ingenuity. In developing tools for understanding the past, interpreting the present, and anticipating future possibilities. The technologies that allow us to see beneath desert surfaces, to reconstruct ancient climate patterns with increasing precision, and to date archaeological materials with remarkable accuracy represent contemporary expressions of the same innovative spirit that characterize the communities whose achievements we study and admire. The development of increasingly sophisticated analytical techniques continues to expand our capabilities for understanding past environmental conditions and human adaptations. While computer modeling and simulation technologies enable researchers to test hypotheses about environmental change and human responses that would be impossible to investigate through direct observation. These technological advances demonstrate the remarkable progress human communities have made in developing tools for understanding complex systems and predicting future possibilities. In the profound stillness of the desert night, surrounded by landscapes that hold thousands of years of human history within their apparent emptiness and silence, we can appreciate the fundamental continuity that connects all human experience across time, space, and cultural boundaries. Recognizing that the same fundamental drives for survival, meaning, beauty, and understanding that motivated ancient communities continue to inspire human communities today. The stars that move slowly across the night sky tonight provided the same guidance, inspiration, and sense of wonder for ancient desert travelers that they offer to contemporary observers, creating a direct astronomical connection that transcends the vast expanses of time and dramatic environmental changes that separate us from these ancient communities. This stellar continuity reminds us that some aspects of human experience remain constant and universal, even as surface conditions change dramatically across historical periods. The gentle wind that shapes sand dunes and carries the subtle fragrances of desert plants across vast distances connects us immediately and physically to the same atmospheric systems and weather patterns that supported ancient communities and influenced the environmental conditions they experienced throughout their daily lives, creating a direct sensory link to the natural forces that shaped past civilizations while continuing to influence contemporary environmental conditions. This immediate physical connection to natural systems helps us understand that we remain integral participants in the same planetary processes and ecological relationships that have always governed life on Earth. Despite the technological developments that often seem to separate contemporary communities from direct engagement with natural systems, the recognition of our continued dependence on natural systems and our participation in natural cycles can inspire both humility and appreciation for the complex relationships that sustain all life on our planet. Let the profound tranquility of this desert contemplation settle around you like the softest, most comforting blanket imaginable, bringing with it the deep peace that comes from understanding our intimate connection to both the natural world that sustains all life and the vast, inspiring sweep of human experience that extends backward through countless generations and forward into limitless future possibilities filled with potential for continued adaptation, innovation, and cultural development. The silence of the desert night holds within its apparent emptiness all the sounds that once filled these landscapes during periods of greater abundance. The voices of ancient communities sharing stories and knowledge around evening fires, the gentle splash of water flowing in rivers that have long since disappeared, the rustle of vegetation growing in places where now only wind moves through spaces empty of all but the most specialized forms of life adapted to current conditions. This silence serves as a repository of memory, preserving in its depths the echoes of countless human experiences that unfolded across these landscapes when they supported very different environmental conditions and much larger human populations. The ability to perceive these echoes requires a kind of imaginative listening that connects us to past experiences while enriching our understanding of the possibilities for future adaptation and cultural development. In this state of peaceful awareness, surrounded by tangible evidence of countless transformations and successful adaptations accomplished by human communities throughout history, we can rest in the comforting knowledge that change and continuity exist together in perfect harmony, that apparent endings often contain within themselves the seeds of new beginnings, and that the human capacity for creativity, resilience, and innovation continues to evolve and develop in response to whatever challenges and opportunities the future may bring. The desert's precious gift of silence and apparent emptiness creates ideal conditions for recognizing the profound fullness that exists within simplicity. Appreciating the way that reduction to absolute essentials can reveal fundamental truths that remain hidden in more complex and distracting environments. The ancient communities that once thrived in these regions during periods of environmental abundance may have developed particularly refined and sophisticated approaches to questions about the relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. These communities may have learned to find genuine abundance within apparent scarcity and deep meaning within apparent emptiness, developing spiritual and practical wisdom that enabled them to maintain hope, purpose, and cultural achievement even during periods of environmental challenge and resource limitation. The wisdom traditions that emerged from these experiences offer valuable insights for contemporary communities seeking to develop sustainable approaches to environmental challenges that address both practical needs and the deeper spiritual dimensions of human existence. As our gentle journey through these landscapes of infinite possibility draws to its peaceful conclusion, we find ourselves enriched by contemplation of the vast patterns of change and adaptation that have characterized human existence throughout history. Inspired by examples of creativity and resilience that demonstrate the remarkable capacities of human communities for innovation and cultural development, even under challenging circumstances. Allow yourself to rest completely in the profound sense of peace that comes from recognizing the fundamental continuity that connects all life across time and space, linking past and present and future in an unbroken chain of experience and transformation that extends beyond individual lifetimes, while remaining intimately connected to personal experience and daily life. The evidence for sophisticated ancient civilizations in regions now characterized as extreme deserts reminds us that human communities have always been active participants in the larger dance of environmental change and adaptation. We are contributors to an ongoing story that extends far beyond individual lifetimes, while remaining intimately connected to personal choices and daily actions that influence both immediate conditions and long-term patterns of cultural and environmental development. Understanding our participation in these larger patterns can provide both perspective on contemporary challenges and inspiration for continued innovation and adaptation, based on the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of human experience. Tomorrow, when the sun rises over these same landscapes with the same gentle warmth that has illuminated this region for millions of years, it will reveal sand dunes and rock formations that continue to hold countless secrets within their seemingly simple forms. Warming archaeological sites where evidence of human creativity and resilience waits patiently for discovery by future researchers who will add their own contributions to our growing understanding of human history and environmental change. The light that reveals these hidden treasures tomorrow morning will be the same sunlight that once nourished the green landscapes where ancient communities flourished for thousands of years, connecting past and present through the fundamental forces that continue to shape our planet and support all life on Earth. This solar continuity creates another direct physical link between contemporary experience and ancient history, reminding us that we share the same sources of energy and life that sustained our ancestors across thousands of years of environmental and cultural change. Sleep peacefully tonight, knowing with complete certainty that you are an integral part of this ongoing story of adaptation and discovery. This beautiful dance between stability and change. This eternal conversation between human consciousness and the natural world that sustains and inspires us across all generations and all environmental conditions. In your dreams, you may find yourself walking through landscapes that exist simultaneously in the geological past and in the realm of infinite possibility, where the boundaries between what was, what is, and what might yet be dissolve into the same gentle flow that connects all existence across time and space. Rest well in the perfect silence of the desert night, where time moves with the patient rhythm of geological change, and the stars shine down upon stories written in sand and stone, preserved in the careful testimony of winds and weather, revealed through the dedicated observations of researchers who commit their lives to reading the secret languages spoken by the earth itself. Here, in this peaceful moment, suspended between day and night, between sleeping and waking, between past and future, all the evidence points toward the same profound and comforting truth. Life finds a way to flourish under even the most challenging circumstances. Human communities possess remarkable capacities for adaptation and innovation that enable not only survival, but cultural achievement and spiritual growth. And our planet continues its ancient work of transformation with the infinite patience of eternity itself, creating endless possibilities for beauty, meaning, renewal, and the continued evolution of consciousness and culture across the vast expanses of time that stretch before us into an infinite future filled with possibilities we can barely imagine but can face with confidence, based on the remarkable achievements of our ancestors who faced their own challenges with creativity, resilience, and hope.